As always, Egypt always adopts very responsible stances in its foreign policy that are balanced and sane and centered on the idea of sovereignty and the unity of the state and peaceful coexistence and the respect of state sovereignty. And this is what the statement by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs today reflected. These are the founding principles of Egyptian foreign policy. And of course, Egypt has a very historic and deep relationship with Syria that goes way back in history, maybe even has ties to the days of the pharaohs, maybe. And in modern history, of course, there is an abundance of common heritage and common political cooperation and even economic relations up until the war, of course, that gives them a very vested interest, that gives Egypt a very vested interest in Syrian stability and unity. And this is what was reflected today by the Foreign Ministry's press release, and also by the phone call Minister Badr Abdulati held with Hakan Fidan, the foreign minister of Turkey, and they did agree on these same principles. And I think that the Arab countries led by Egypt and maybe even Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Iraq, United Arab Emirates should have an expanded role in supporting Syria in its transition to a stable, democratic state open to diversity, and most of all, a unified Syria, which is much more than I can say about the current state of affairs in Syria, of course.
Well, so how do the ongoing Israeli attacks on Syria's infrastructure impact the political landscape, and why isn't the new government responding to these provocations?
Yes, I love how you let that out of that question now, because it's related to the end of my previous statement, and that is Syria today is divided. Syria today is subjected to rounds and rounds of Israeli aggression. It started way before the collapse of the Assad regime, but now they're not just periodic airstrikes here and there. Now Israel is carrying out a full-out land grab inside Syria. They are carrying out an invasion. Let's call a spade a spade. And now they have taken control of the buffer zone. They went about 21 kilometers deep, according to some reports, and they have now controlled Jabal al-Sheikh, which is a very strategic part of southern Syria and the Golan Heights, in the intersection between Syria and Lebanon and the occupied Golan Heights. Also, they have even advanced today, reportedly, even though they denied, but it seems that they're lying, because most other independent media outlets are confirming it, and also Syrian sources, they advanced to the countryside of the capital, Damascus, which is a very, very dangerous precedent and a very dangerous escalation as well. And now the Israeli Defense Minister, Israel Katz, openly announced that they are going to establish a so-called exclusive defensive zone in southern Syria. So that means that they are not tied by or contained by the buffer zone anymore, as they announced. So that means there is an occupation project in southern Syria, more Israeli expansion, and that the Israeli government is lying about its intentions, including what they said, that this will be a temporary affair, or a temporary presence, or a temporary measure. However, the 1967 occupation of the Golan Heights and the West Bank and Gaza started out as a temporary measure that lasted for over 50 years. Now, the current government in Syria, which is now in its first hours in office, they have not released so far a single statement regarding what has been going on. Not even the factions that formed this government, formed this government led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, have released anything regarding these blatant acts of Israeli aggression that serve to destroy and completely dismantle the military infrastructure of the Syrian state, which means if they decide to reestablish the Syrian armed forces one day, they will not be able to find anything to equip it with.
Then, sir, then how do you assess the silence or the new regime's strategies or handling of the Israeli ongoing strikes on Syrian military facilities, especially regarding the international responses?
Because this gives us an idea of what happened with the fall of Assad, basically. That the fall of Assad was orchestrated, I believe, and supported fully by the United States and other regional players. And Israel, of course, I believe, was involved. Israel has a history of supporting many rebel factions inside Syria, including Hayat Tahrir al-Sham at some point, under the pretext of treating the wounded and even opening refuge for some of the militants that used to escape while fighting the Syrian army in southern Syria. So they do have a previous relationship, and this was admitted by former senior Israeli officials. This is no conspiracy theory. A former head of Mossad, for example, did openly admit that on live television on numerous occasions. So
Yes.
Israel does have ties and certain understandings with these factions, and maybe these factions are willing to be on the receiving end or accept or tolerate Israel's transgressions in return for Israel not obstructing their path to power, which is a very dangerous indication, to be honest. And it raises questions about the compromises that are being made in order to enact some sort of political change in
Yes.
Syria. However, what happened has happened, and the Syrian regime of Bashar al-Assad does not exist anymore. And now we have a new reality on the ground. And this new government is required at least to attempt to mobilize international support against Israel's transgressions. In terms of international support, the UN condemned what happened, and they called it a clear violation of the 1974 disengagement agreement, and it is, of course, that. And if I may add, it's a violation of the UN Charter and many other basic international laws and the concept of state sovereignty, and also, of course, the Arab League and many Arab states, starting with Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, they have opened, and Turkey as well, they have openly, Iran openly condemned Israel's actions. However, it doesn't seem that the international community is doing anything about it. And why? Because Israel, reportedly, the United States, according to various reports, has consented to Israel's behavior inside Syria. And this is also a very dangerous indication, since the 1974 agreement was
Yes.
brokered by the United States. So now they are to stand silently while Israel basically abrogates one agreement after another. This means that they are embracing Netanyahu's brazen threats from the UN podium to create a new Middle East and basically redraw the entire map of the Middle East. If we are to allow this to happen, and if they are to allow this to happen, they are opening the door for more chaos and violence in the region and in Syria, of course.
Yes.